Hello and welcome to ETH Insights exclusive interview series. Today we have with us Mr. Gopal Agarwal. He is the CEO of Anupam Rasayan. Mr. Agarwal, thank you for taking the time out and speaking to ETH Insights.
Thank you
It's
for
good
having
to
me.
host you. Yeah. Let me begin by asking you, when we talk about specialized chemicals, how do you see the growth in the Indian market, and going forward, what are the opportunities and challenges for Indian corporates?
So let me answer this in two phases. So one is the short term and one is the long term.
Right.
So if you look at basically let's say last 3 or 4 quarters, there have been a bit of, I would say, destocking challenges. We have had certain geographies where there was oversupply issue, which did lead to the market being a bit subdued.
Right.
And I do believe, I guess, there would be headwinds for another couple of quarters. But I think if you look at it, I guess maybe this is more towards the H1 of FY25. But post that, I do believe, I think things will start looking kind of a positive,
Right.
and one should see enough and more growth going forward. That's the short term answer to it. If you talk about long term, I think Indian specialty chemical industry has seen decent amount of growth over number of years, and I do believe that that will continue. So just to give you some industry perspective, currently the industry would be around $60-65 billion. I do believe, let's say 3 years down the line, it could easily go up to 90 billion, which is almost 50% growth,
Right.
which is quite huge. If you were to kind of look at it from a share CAGR growth perspective. And I do believe there are a number of factors which are kind of working for India. While people have been talking only about China plus one, but we as a company do believe there is enough and more opportunity which is lying as Europe plus one.
Right.
There are certain challenges in terms of energy cost, in terms of manpower cost, the plants getting older. So there would be a decent amount of shift which would happen from Europe to, let's say, countries like India, and hence I do believe the specialty chemical companies in India have enough and more, I would say, growth levers going forward for them. Of course, there would be certain industries which would see, let's say, more growth compared to others. So I do believe agrochemical, within specialty chemical could be little, let's say, growing at a slower pace. But we as a company are seeing enough and more traction, let's say, in polymers, in pharmaceuticals, in electrical chemicals. So those are, I would say, some of the sectors which are going to see enough and more growth. Even in terms of geography, for example, I do
Right.
believe geographies like Japan and US, which have been again a focus market for us, would see a lot more, let's say, healthier growth compared to some of the traditional markets.
Right. Interestingly, you just talked about the huge traction Anupam Rasayan is getting, and as a company, you've been very successful in exporting, especially to large MNCs. So, what are some of the key strategies that Indian corporates can look or learn from Anupam Rasayan to become a successful exporter of
So I would say
specialized chemicals?
we are also still learning.
Right.
But yeah, if I was to just kind of let's say talk about some of those hooks, which helped us really excel our relationship, or I would rather call partnership,
Right.
with those MNCs were, I would say, first and foremost is quality, consistency, your ability to build, I would say, a robust supply chain,
Right.
your ability to invest, I would say, continuously, in the R&D and the technology part of it, and last but not the least, your cost effectiveness.
Right.
So ultimately, you could do all of this, but if you are not cost effective, trust me, there is only so much traction you would get, with anybody. While people do talk about diversification,
Right.
but yeah, the diversification cannot come if you are not competitive enough in the market. And one of the, I would say, the last one, which is tracking, kind of getting maximum traction, is the whole thrust on the ESG part of it.
Right.
And the kind of customers we are dealing with, which are largely as multinationals, there is enough and more, I would say, willingly or otherwise, or through regulator, I would say, kind of a effort towards decarbonization, for the industry as a whole. And I think that is, again, I would say, is one of the aspects which we got to kind of cover in detail for you to be really successful with these MNCs. And I said, it's not that you could look at one aspect and forget the other one. So for example, you got to not only maintain quality, but you have to maintain consistency. So it's not that okay, somebody who's excelled in quality, but let's say doesn't have the backward integration or is not able to ensure the consistency, would definitely face challenges. One of the key thing which at least our customers have appreciated, over a period of time, is that our ability to work with them to ensure that we are doing a continuous improvement, through process engineering, through our let's say R&D effort, which is ensuring that not only that we are producing, let's say, quality product, as I said, at the same time we are able to kind of do the same let's say production or the same product at a much I would say lower cost. And last but not the least, I would say one of the things which has helped us, because typically our contracts are long term with customers.
Right.
They can minimum be like 5 to 7 years, and there are some customers for whom we are doing product for last maybe 25-30 years. Now, how would you ever be able to imagine that, what would be the price or what would be the situation 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line, in this dynamic world? So one principle which we have always followed is of transparency and honesty, wherein we have what we call as an open costing system with most of our customers, where we agree, basically on certain input parameters, and then ensure that we have a partnership model wherein we are able to kind of pass on let's say the benefit of anything good which we are able to achieve. At the same time, if there are certain price dynamics, both of us are basically kind of selling or sinking in the same boat.
Right. Since you talked about ESG, let me just ask you, how important is ESG for an organization like Anupam Rasayan, and what are some of these challenges organizations face while incorporating ESG in their process system?
Let me kind of put it this way, that see, ESG is not no more optional.
Right.
This is something which is now, I would believe, is an integral part for companies, not only let's say globally, but even for Indian companies. And the way at least we have looked at ESG is that it's not that you got to do ESG because it basically kind of puts or portrays a better picture of yours, but a lot of effort which we have kind of taken over a period of time on ESG front have ensured that enough and more cost benefit of those have also come to us as an organization. So to just give you some perspective, for example, we as an organization, as Anupam Rasayan, we are committed to basically go net zero as far as energy net zero is concerned on scope 1 and scope 2 by FY27. This is not a small feat, which let's say a company sitting in India is talking about. I can tell you there are handful companies which could even talk about something of this sort. But look at the other side of it. It is giving me enough and more edge, with my customer, because the customers which we have, the MNCs, they also have their MNC, what we call, because they are MNCs, they also have to reduce carbon footprint of not their only own, but even the suppliers like us, who are supplying material to them.
Right.
So we are in a way kind of let's say helping the cause, from their perspective. So one could argue that okay, is this something which is your own initiative? Of course it is, but at the same time it is something which is helping me build a sustainable business with my own customer. So I would definitely say, this is something which should be seen more as a long-term sustainable business model than saying, okay, I got to adhere to it because some regulator, is asking me to do it.
Right.
And which is across, I would say, environment, whether it is in terms of investing in the employee well-beings or even the overall governance framework, be it your board, be it your overall behavior. I do believe, I think this is something which will pay you, much more in the long term than what it will take from you. But yeah, you got to have a little long-term view on this.
Right.
Then, probably to say that, okay, can I really get something immediately?
Right. So obviously even sustainability, which is, it's become a norm just like ESG, and it is indeed a long-term goal for most organizations. For Anupam Rasayan, especially, specialized chemical organization, how do you look at waste reduction process in your system?
It's a good question, which you're kind of putting up. So I think the way at least we have looked at waste reduction, and again, we have always looked at everything, while we would do enough and more things responsibly.
Right.
But at the same time, we always associate that with the overall, let's say, the profitability and cost aspect, in our organization. Let's look at it simply. The lesser waste to generate, which means that your throughput is higher.
Right.
So if I'm, let's say, importing 100 kgs and if I'm ensuring that I get 99 kgs out of it, which means that I am only generating
Yeah.
1 kg of waste. So what we have done over a period of time is that ensured that you are not looking at waste reduction only at the final stage. We have a dedicated, let's say for example, process R&D team, which looks at all our processes, let's say starting from the base raw material till the final product is produced.
Right.
To ensure that at each stage, how are we able to kind of, let's say, lower or reduce the quantity of byproduct which comes out of it. As I said, lower the byproduct,
Right.
lower would be the waste,
Yeah.
and eventually, you would have lesser stuff, which is left to treat. But, chemical is one of the industry where you will have something, despite whatever amount of R&D you do, despite whatever amount of process,
Correct.
let's say this thing will do, there will be certain, waste which will still remain, which we will have to either recycle or do something about it. There what we have done is that we have worked with, I would say, some of our partners like cement industries and others, where we have ensured that whatever waste we are generating, maximum of that basically how do we recycle where it becomes usable by them.
Right.
So I think there's been a huge amount of effort which we have taken on that. To just give you some idea, as far as we are concerned, let's say if we were generating 100 kg of waste, and we were, earlier the large part of it, used to get landfill, wherein what you would do is that you will, whatever waste is generated, you will go and, you'll probably do a landfilling. We have been able to reduce our landfill by 85%
That's
over a period of
remarkable,
time.
yeah.
And as I said, this is nothing but which has come over a period of time by ensuring that there is some innovation, there is some R&D which you are doing
Right.
to ensure that you are making your waste, maybe like a raw material or something, for some other industry,
Right.
thereby ensuring that rather than doing a landfill, it kind of becomes a raw material or something, for somebody else.
Right, right. Mr. Agarwal, safety is paramount, especially when we talk about chemical industry. So, what are the safety standards your organization puts for its workers, and how do you look at the well-being of your employees?
So I would say again, when you are running a chemical plant, there
Right.
are certain, I would say, inherent risk which one is kind of working with. The only way you could ensure, let's say, the safety and overall well-being of your employee is through, I would say, multiple things. One is ensuring that you are having regular training programs. Two is that you are equipping your employees, with what we call as the PPEs, which are the protective
Yeah.
equipment, which we are giving to the employees, and ensuring that those guys are using it. One is providing it, and one is ensuring the employee kind of use it.
Right.
So we are kind of taking regular, I would say, training programs, regular this thing to tell them why this is important, why it is good for their own kind of a well-being. And I would say over a period of time, I think we have been able to kind of build that culture. And trust me, safety is not something which you could do today and not do tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So it is a culture which we have been able to build, I would say, over a period of time, which ensures that most of our employees are kind of adhering to it. And again, I would say the benefit of those, not only from the well-being of employee, but even otherwise, is uninterrupted production. Even your customers basically do, let's say, X amount of monitoring, in terms of what safety protocol rules and otherwise you are following. So it does help you, I would say, in multiple ways as far as that part is concerned. Another thing which we have done is that also invested a lot on automation. To just give you an example, we have in chemical, for example, you could do process in batch. We have been working over a period of time, and we have converted most of our process to continuous.
Right.
Which would mean that we are dealing with a smaller quantity, but over a period of time. What it does is that it kind of reduces inherent risk of the process. It is efficient. It is much more, I would say, easier, let's say, for employees to kind of work upon. So we basically, let's say, kind of imported this G4 corning machine.
Right.
Not only providing to be a what you call edge when it comes to our production efficiencies, but proving to be a huge safety, what we call tool for our employees. The way kind of it operates, because as I said, you're dealing in a much safer environment and a much automated environment,
Right.
then kind of leaving it everything to the employees. Of course, you could do X amount of automation, you still would always be dependent on employees to
Right.
kind of do it. So that is something which you can't kind of take out, and which is where I said you need to build that long-term culture to ensure that this kind of remains, I would say, more long-term than short-term. But yeah, I would just say automation and bit of those training would
Right.
go hand in hand to ensure that you are ensuring well-being and safety of your employees.
Right. Very pertinent point, that no matter how much technology or innovation you do, human workforce is the most essential
It
part
is,
of your
it is, indeed.
industry. On that note, Mr. Agarwal, thank you very much for your precious time. I wish you all the best for all the projects you are involved in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Nice
you.
talking to you.